Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Well, Tony, we had the week off and we thought, what better way to celebrate the week off than by outsourcing our work as well? What do we have to do? We have to come up with a topic for a show. Well, how do we outsource that, Tony? It's another listener question show. We love our audience always, but we love them even more. Number one, when they hit the thumbs up button on our YouTube videos, go ahead and do that right now. And number two, when they do our work for us. So thank you. We appreciate it.
We do appreciate it. You should do it more often. I shouldn't have to ask. That's another, we appreciate it. Shouldn't have to ask. Anyway, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for the questions, because we've got some good ones again that we can go ahead and attack. Tom, please.
All right. So first one is from Whetstone TKD. With what Jeremiah Smith is doing, how would you rate the top freshman seasons, and we're going to say true freshman seasons, just to make sure everyone's on the same page, at Ohio State? In Whetstone's opinion, it is Orlando Pace, Maurice Clarett, and then Jeremiah Smith. Two very important words here, Tony, for now.
I think you could see Jeremiah Smith eventually become number one. I went through it and looked, and just Orlando Pace, the legend was it, how do you remember hearing legend? Is it no sacks in college, or was it one sack as a freshman that he allowed? Because in my mind, it was one, but I can't prove it, and I'm not going to go back and look. Do you have a memory of the legend in that regard?
This was a little before my time.
Okay.
I mean, I was at Ohio State his final season, but his true freshman season, I was not there yet. I think I remember that he had 0 sacks allowed, but while you're talking, you did a ton of research for this one. So I'm going to let you carry this conversation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to dig into the 1996 Ohio State Media Guide online, and I will see if I can get you an answer for that very important question.
So Orlando Pace started every single game. He was the first team left tackle from the first day of preseason camp. However, he was not even a first team All Big Ten selection as a freshman. He was not even a second team All Big Ten selection. A pair of Michigan State tackles, Shane Hanna and Brian DeMarco, were the second teamers. Corey Stringer, of course, a first teamer, and Mike Verstegen, a first teamer from Wisconsin. So I would agree, he was fantastic. He's the greatest Ohio State player we've ever seen, Tom and I. That is one of the main tenets of this show. And he is the greatest of all time, the greatest college football player I've ever seen. However, I don't believe he had the best freshman season. And I'm not just saying that because the media didn't vote him first team All Big Ten or second team All Big Ten. Maurice Clarett missed 3 games. I still will stand on top of a mountain today and tell you, if he does not miss those 3 games, he wins the Heisman as a true freshman. Rushed for, I believe, 1,237 yards. Burst out of the scene with 175 yards against Texas Tech, 3 touchdowns. Could have been more, but Jim Tressel decided to give Lydell Ross some of those touchdowns. I think and then 230 yards against Washington State a few weeks later. Outstanding, one of the best freshman seasons of all time. Technically, not even the best freshman running back season of all time at Ohio State. That's J.K. Dobbins. Jeremiah Smith is going to put up some ridiculous numbers. Right now, and I didn't even look up Jeremiah Smith's full numbers. I believe it is 11 catches for 211 yards receiving is what he has right now, and I'm bringing it up right now. Why would I take Oregon? Sorry. Tom, while you're vamping, I'm going to vamp. While you're researching it, I'm just going to continue to click, and I promise you I will get there. So 11 catches, 211 yards for Jeremiah Smith right now. So I went through and, we always talk about the freshman receivers at Ohio State, what they do. Chris Carter, in his first 2 games, 4 catches for 32 yards. Ted Ginn in his first 2 games, and no touchdowns for Chris Carter. Ted Ginn in his first 2 games, 3 catches for 9 yards, no touchdowns. David Boston, we know he started out his career with a 58-yarder. He scored, he had two catches for 72 yards in the opener, 2 for 21 in the next game. Scored once in the first game, twice in the second game. So 93 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns. And then Garrett Wilson had 1 catch for 9 yards and a touchdown in his first 2 games. So Jeremiah Smith has matched David Boston in touchdowns, but he's exceeded him every other way. So he's going to be up there. But Tom, I'm going to the answer to this one for me is Andy Katzenmoyer. Andy Katzenmoyer finished with 85 tackles as a true freshman, 23 tackles for loss, 12 sacks, 6 passes broken up, 3 forced fumbles, 4 interceptions, had a tackle for loss in every single game as a true freshman. And I went through and put all of his game log together, and he caps it with 5 tackles for loss and 3 sacks against Jake the Snake in the Rose Bowl. He had 3 games with interceptions right in a row. I don't know if he's the last player to do that. Malik Hooker didn't do that. Like, I was going to do some research on that. Like, let alone having 3 interceptions in a season, he had them all right in a row, and that wasn't even all of his interceptions. So, greatest freshman season I've ever seen at Ohio State. He was bigger than life that year, and then played well this next 2 years. But it was like, oh, he didn't do the 23 tackles for loss thing again, and he didn't do the just wrecking havoc all over the place. He was a legend as a true freshman, even before the season. I remember he was a USA Today cover and things of that nature, where this guy is going to be amazing. And then you've got Ryan Miller and Greg Belisari on either side of him to control things, and then he was the guy that was just sent to destroy things.
Yeah, he was someone who the hype was unbelievable there. And you've seen Ohio State guys where you have all the hype in the world. And I go back to Terrell Pryor, for example. And Terrell Pryor, you saw flashes in his freshman year, but it didn't really actually happen for him in his freshman year. You go back to like the Penn State game, like that offense looked bad when Terrell Pryor was in there at times in his freshman year. Mm-hmm. Andy Katzenmoyer was not necessarily ready to play. I don't think he knew the whole playbook when he got there. I kind of have this memory of Greg Belisari kind of like lining him up sometimes and just kind of, it wasn't exactly like walk him over to a spot and then point somewhere and say, go. But it was not that far off of that at times. It felt like that season, but it just worked because he was such an absolute freak athletically and just had great instincts as well. So yeah, I think that's a great answer. That's not necessarily the answer I would have come up with at the start of this exercise, but I think it's a very, very good answer. I had to dig back through both the 1996 and 1995 Ohio State media guides. The 1996 one talks about the fact he did not allow a sack in the 1995 season. It does not go into real much detail in his 1994 season, so I went back to the 95 media guide. That also does not say he did not allow a sack during the 1994 season. So I am sort of forced to conclude, Tony, that he probably did allow 1 sack in 1994. I just remember that the thing I remember about 1994 was they would play that tackles over formation with Corey Stringer and Orlando Pace on the same side of the field and just pave people. That was that's one of those things where that's a combination of talent you do not have very often on a football team, let alone lining up next to each other.
No, but I love that question. And right now, Tom, who is your guy in terms of who had the best freshman season in your mind? And then do you think that will remain number one after this season?
So I think you've made a very compelling case for Katzenmoyer. Like I said, I don't think that's where I would have gone to start this exercise. And starting at left tackle is pretty incredible already. So that there's a little bit of degree of difficulty there where, you get extra credit in war in baseball if you play a difficult position. And left tackle is like the shortstop of football. So it feels like he should get a little bit of extra credit there. But I'm gonna say Katzenmoyer 1, Pace 2. If Clarett had stayed healthy, he probably is number 1 on this list, like you said, but he didn't because he missed 3 games, but then he also missed long chunks of other games. He played 6 full games and missed parts of 3 or 4 and then missed 3 others. So yeah, he missed just too much time really to probably be as high as he could have been on this list. If Jeremiah Smith continues at the pace he's going, which is he's averaging a little over 100 yards a game, and he's averaging 6, 7 catches, something like that. What do you have, 9 and 6 or something like that? I mean, he's
5.5 right now.
5.5. Okay, so 5.5 catches per game. So if he finishes this, if he plays 16 games and he averages 5.5 catches and he averages 100 yards a game and he averages a touchdown and a half per game, he's breaking every record in the Ohio State record book other than the receptions per season. He's probably not getting there, but he could get more receptions. He's probably not going to average a touchdown and a half per game, probably. But I mean, if he puts up close to, if he puts up more than 1,500 yards receiving and he puts up, I mean, what's Terry Glenn's record for touchdowns in a season? 17 receiving touchdowns, I think. Something like that, 17, 18. If he's breaking those records as a true freshman and Ohio State gets to the point where they're playing for the national championship, winning the national championship, I think that might, in a lot of people's minds, if he's part of winning the national championship and he does all this other stuff, I think that probably pushes him over the top in a lot of people's minds, because Katzenmoyer darn near got him there. If Florida State had put up a little bit of a better fight against Florida in the Sugar Bowl, that very well could have been a split national championship. They got beat, 52-20 or something like that in that game. So it was no longer a split national championship. But boy, if Jeremiah Smith continues at the pace he's on, and that's a question, and Ohio State wins the national championship, and that's a question, I think I think he becomes sort of your default answer there.
Yeah, I would agree. And we've talked in the past about what freshman receiving records what is he going to set? And I think we both came to the conclusion, I know I did, I assume you did as well, that he's going to break every Chris Carter record. And Chris Carter holds the receptions record, the yardage record, and the touchdown records. Chris Carter, 1984, 41 catches, 648 yards, 8 touchdowns. Jeremiah Smith is already a quarter of the way to the catches, but a third of the way to the yards and the touchdowns. What kind of odds, Tom, would you have to put on it? What would you put on him to break those? Is it like
Tony?
Plus
the real
12,
question
minus
here
1,200.
The real question here is over under the Penn State game.
Well, that's
end of the Penn State game. When does that happen?
And is that
Penn State game is what, the first week in November, like the 2nd of November or something like that.
I'm going under.
I think I'm going under on at least 2 of them.
Right. It's the receptions is the toughest one for me.
Yeah.
41 receptions again is the record for Ohio State freshmen. So it's not just a willy-nilly number, and it's tough to get there. And but I think we're all. It's just a matter of time before all of those records are his, and then completely unattainable for the rest of time, because Chris Henry next year, there's going to be too many guys that are also catching the ball for him to break that record, probably.
Just take 1 second to think about the fact that 2026 wide receiver Chris Henry will be on the team potentially at the same time as Jeremiah Smith. Just take a second to think about that. All right, while you Ohio State fans take a quick drag from your cigarette, let's move on to the next question. At Chick Rex Arch says, prior Tressel had NCAA penalties carried over by the NFL. Harbaugh in August got a whole season suspension, yet nothing from the NFL. Why the double standard? Tony, against all odds, you have once again done the research here. So go ahead. What's our answer?
Well, and we've talked about this in the past as well when we thought this would come up. And I remember at the time saying, well, the NCAA is not going to suspend him because he's no longer with the NCAA. He's like, they're not going to waste their time. I was wrong. They did waste their time, and they have suspended him for however long. But the Jim Tressel suspension was a suggestion by Jim Tressel, and it was commensurate with the player suspension that went on. And here there are no player suspensions to be commensurate with. And also, the one thing we know about Jim Harbaugh, he is never going to suggest that he should be suspended for anything. So right away, that's a non-starter. So there are no players being suspended that a coach would have to match. So that's not something that is part of the table. And Jim Harbaugh is not going to suggest it. So this is a situation where Jim Tressel was a replay assistant, not a head coach. And so the levels, you're not going to suspend a head coach for something they did in college. You can recall Roger Goodell at the time saying, I support that decision. I think that's a wise one in reference to the Colts going along with Tressel's suggestion. And then he adds, I think it was clear that if they didn't take an appropriate action, I would have taken appropriate action. That's one of those things, whereas, if they hadn't backed away, I was going to knock them out. But again, the reason Jim Tressel had a suspension was because players had suspensions. And that's, at least in my opinion. And so there are no players being suspended here yet. So there's nothing for Jim Harbaugh to serve.
All right. So next one from @Terminator13. How much offensive scheme do you think Chip Kelly is saving for the Oregon game? And so this is an interesting one. I just talked to Ross Bolton on the morning show a couple days ago about this. And he has been impressed with how many different things they are putting out there right now. They have been much more, they put out a bunch of different looks. They put out a bunch of different, they've run different plays, different combinations of run and RPO. Talked to Ross about a couple of things they were doing in the RPO game off of the outside zone play. So they're just they're throwing just a bunch of stuff out there right now. So I think that people, a lot of times, and I'm not saying this is what this question is asking, but a lot of times people are thinking, when you're saving something, you're saving the annexation of Puerto Rico, and oh boy, they're never going to see this coming. And saving stuff is just, what else do you have to iterate off of the stuff you're doing right now? Because right now they put a bunch of stuff on film, but then you have different iterations off of that. And sometimes that's different route combinations. Sometimes that might just be different blocking combinations, different blocking schemes up front on the same play that, hey, the last time you pulled the guard and the tackle, but this time you're pulling the tackle and the tight end. And that changes some of the run fits for the defense. And that changes, how teams might be trying to attack what you're doing. And it might change, different route combinations might change who's getting open. So the answer is, yeah, you're going to see a bunch of different stuff for Oregon, and they're going to have continued. I'm sure Chip Kelly has stuff laid out basically for the whole season. That's, when there's a TV show that's a really well done TV show, and you look back at the end, you can look back and it's like, oh man, in season 1, they hinted at this thing. And then, it wasn't a coincidence that season 8, it all played out this way. I think you're going to see the Ohio State offense sort of the same way. They probably have some stuff laid out that, hey, here's what we're going to do right now. And here's what we expect teams to counterpunch us with when they see this on film. So here's how we're going to answer that counterpunch. And then they're going to have this. You have the number of coaches. You have the number of analysts. Chip Kelly has the time in the day right now just to think about this stuff, because he doesn't have to do all the head coaching crap. He doesn't have to go shake all the hands, kiss all the babies, do all the rubber chicken circuit things. He doesn't have to be on the road recruiting probably as much as Ryan Day does. So he has time to think about this stuff. I think they probably have a certain amount of stuff sort of laid out for the season. And I don't know that it's, hey, we're going to do this in week 6 and we're going to do this in week 8. It's just, you've got this stuff in your back pocket. You're going to practice. You're going to have a couple iterations ahead where you've worked on stuff, and then you're going to pull it out when you need it. You don't know that, hey, in the second quarter on 2nd and 3, we're going to call this against Michigan. You don't know that, but hey, here's the next step. Here's the next step after that. Here's the next step after that. So yeah, they have a bunch of stuff. I don't know how much of it is specifically saved for Oregon in particular, though.
Yeah, and how much do you need to save for Oregon? Boise State rushed for 220 yards on them last week, so the Oregon defense will be better by the time they get there. But you're describing it kind of like a slow burn TV show, and Ryan Day has described it as a process that takes time, and Chip Kelly's going to be patient with it. And you saw the progression from the Akron game to the Western Michigan game. And that's not just the scheme, that's the offensive line getting better, gelling together, getting more experienced. And we've seen how well the experience has helped just from one game to the next. Not a lot of people know this, Tom. The improvement from game 1 to game 2 is significant. People don't know that. I've been saying it a lot. But
big if true.
The idea that you're saving stuff, like it's all a progression. And so you've got stuff, but then once it becomes game week and game prep, it's the stuff that you practice that you're going to use. You're not going to practice a bunch of stuff and not use it because you're just wasting time on stuff you could be doing. And coaches will always talk about having something new for everybody, and how when opponents come up against Ohio State's defense and offense, frankly, there's always stuff that they've never seen, they've never shown. Like, how many times have we talked to players or coaches like, we never saw that in film? And because you have to come up with something new against a program like Ohio State. And I think you have to do the same thing for Oregon, but also you're never going to get away from what you do well. And the stuff that they're doing right now, the stuff that they're doing well, they're going to continue to do. And then you build off of it. If this, then this, and you add pieces to it. You add a new portions of your Swiss Army knife to your utility belt and go from there. But I don't foresee, like, now they're 5 wides for 20% of the game or whatever. I don't think they're saving anything crazy, but you just build off of things and you look for tendencies and then build off of your tendencies and go away from those. You show this and you give this, which is something that Jim Knowles said that he's working on this week in terms of where are there disadvantages? Where could Akron and Western Michigan have taken advantage of us, but didn't, but somebody else will? Iowa will. Or not Iowa. Penn State, like somebody with an offense. There's just not a lot of those. Oregon can take advantage of us. So you got to be prepared for that. With Chip Kelly, I assume there's going to be some of that same stuff. Like, where will Iowa take advantage of some of our weaknesses right now? Fix those weaknesses, or maybe accentuate them a little bit so that they think they're still weaknesses and then attack in that way. Tom, that's something that I learned from reading a lot of Chinese philosophy.
Sun Tzu, the art of gird. I like it. All right, next up, from Natty Buck Guy 9813, give us some bold predictions for the national games this weekend. Tony, I saw this on the list and I thought, I'll have to get those together. And did I? Well, friends, how about this? The Pac-2, now apparently 6-pack, as we learned earlier in the week. Oregon State plays Oregon in the Civil War. Washington State plays Washington in the Apple Cup. At least one of those teams wins and the other one covers. I think the highly touted, exciting Big Ten national profile teams are going to have a tougher time against the, I'm doing air quotes here, little brother kind of teams from across the state. I think those might be more interesting games than you might expect.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's unfortunate. I believe both of those are 3:30 games. It would be nice if they're 3:30 and a 7:30 so that we could watch both of those. Because these are not going to be happy games. This is clearly rivalries, but for more reasons than just in-state rivalries. As I'm just happy that they've continued to play and agreed to play. One of my bold predictions was something that has never happened in the history of college football, and that is Oregon covers this season. So I think Oregon, they're due. Like I think I could definitely see them losing, because if you've watched them at all, that's basically all you can imagine. But this week, maybe they finally put it all together. They really missed some big time deep shots. Dylan Gabriel, who's pretty accurate, but missed some deep shots in that one that would have made that one a much more comfortable game against Boise State. But I'll be interested to see if Oregon State can move the ball, can run the ball, and that. Here's one, Tom. Here's a pretty bold one. Might be too bold. This might be a 3-pointer. Donovan Edwards rushes for over 100 yards against Arkansas State this week.
It's funny. I looked at Michigan playing Arkansas State and thought, I should say something about Donovan Edwards having a big game. Yeah, they're going to certainly be looking to get that running game going against Arkansas State. They should be able to get the running game going against Arkansas State. If they can't get the running game going against Arkansas State, and it's not because Arkansas State has 9 guys in the box and they're throwing all over Arkansas State, that's going to be the red flag is only going to get bigger. This should be a get right game for Michigan. If it's not, I'm going to have some real grave concerns about how the rest of their season is going. So yeah, I like that one. Definitely not a 3-pointer this week. Might be more of a 1-pointer, but based on history, that is certainly a bold prediction. Let's see. Tennessee's got Kent State. I don't know what Tennessee's single game passing record for a first year quarterback is, but Nico Imalava is probably going to break all of those. It feels like they're going to try and make a little bit of a statement, and he may have, let's say, 6 touchdown passes in the first half for Nico this weekend. How about that?
That's pretty good. When I saw this game earlier in the week, I was like, well, let's just talk about it because the MAC has been doing pretty well. So maybe it's a sneaky thing, but like Tennessee has just been destroying, and they're getting back to what they were with Hendon Hooker, which I think is, I don't think the SEC likes that. The teams in the SEC don't like that. The SEC loves it. The future opponents in the SEC do not like it. So I like that one. How about this one, Tom? Wisconsin is within a field goal in the fourth quarter of Alabama. This could be an absolute blowout because of Alabama's, if they can hit the deep shots, then it'll open up everything. But Alabama struggled last week until the fourth quarter when they scored, 28 points or something like that to get a comfortable win. Wisconsin has, they like to make things close, even with lesser teams. So why not with better teams? I don't have any belief in this, but again, these are bold predictions. They're not supposed to be real predictions.
Yeah. You ever watch, Tony, those hydraulic press videos?
Yes, of course.
Like, watch this, like, whatever. It's a bunch of crayons and they use a hydraulic press and then it just explodes everywhere. That's going to be this game. No. Wisconsin is going to get extruded as some sort of like a paste by about the middle of the third quarter. So best of luck with that one. How about this one? Georgia gives up less than 100 yards of total offense against Kentucky this weekend at Kentucky. That feels like Georgia is in a little bit of a statement mode. And I know the last time that Georgia played up in Kentucky was 2 years ago, and that was one of the games we watched before the Peach Bowl. And Kentucky really gave them a game. I think this Georgia team is real good. I think they're probably looking to make a little bit of a statement, and I think they probably will make quite a statement this weekend.
Kentucky put up 183 total yards against South Carolina last week, 2.9 yards per play. So I probably would not even allow this for 1 point, but I don't. This is going to be a bad one. Is that I think that's the 3:30 CBS or something like that, which, not CBS anymore, I guess the ESPN. So that's going to be a bad one. That's actually 7:30 ABC.
7:30 ABC, prime time. Oh boy. Well, yeah, that might go poorly, is what I think.
My last one, Tom, here is, I don't even know. It's not Super Bowl anymore. Purdue over Notre Dame. Purdue's a 10-point underdog. Notre Dame is not doing very well right now. I was listening to Tom Dienhart, who covers Purdue for one of the networks on the radio, and they asked him, who has the quarterback advantage here? Is it Notre Dame with Riley Leonard, or is it Purdue with Hudson Card? And he's like, oh, it's Purdue, without a doubt. And I don't think I disagree with them right now.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think if that was a noon game, I'd be more inclined to agree with it. It's a 3:30. If it was the sleepy noon Big Ten Network game, that's where you lose at Purdue there. I think Notre Dame got their wake-up call last week, and they'll be okay. I was looking at that one. I was looking at their brethren from the Hoosier State down in Bloomington, Indiana, playing at UCLA, and I thought, boy, that might be a fun upset. And then Indiana's favored by 3. So apparently Vegas is onto both the fact that the Hoosiers might be pretty decent, and also onto the fact that UCLA might be not so good this year. How about one of the only, maybe the only ranked game of the weekend, Boston College at Missouri. Missouri's a 16-point favorite. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say that one is, the over-under is 53.5. That just feels like a game where Boston College probably just tried to slow things down, really keep things at a snail's pace, control the ball. That's one where I bet that one is a 1-score game, 10 minutes left in the game, something like that. Boston College maybe controls the pace of play a little bit. Missouri's wide receivers have not been great this year. Luther Burden, I think, was either injured or sick last week. Mookie Cooper has not had a real notable couple games. So let's say Boston College at least keeps it very close. within a possession in the middle of the fourth quarter.
Interesting. That is the only ranked game on Saturday. The other ranked game of the weekend is number 20 Arizona at number 14 Kansas State at 8 p.m. on Fox. Friday, going to be a fun one. That one could get pretty high scoring. The over-under is only 60.5 right now. I would probably go over just in hopes. Just please let it happen. And so those are our bold predictions for the week. You got anything else? You good? Okay.
No, I will boldly predict that I will do more preparation for next week's actual bold prediction show than I did for this question.
I may not. I do want to pay off on something from Thursday's show about would Ohio State fans would rather beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, and lose in the semifinals, or beat Michigan, lose the Big Ten championship game, win in the semis, and lose in the national championship game. Tom, the Twitter results after 342 votes in a short amount of time, 57.6% would rather beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, and lose in the semis and not even make it to the championship game. So 58% of people would rather win that Big Ten championship game and lose in the semis than not win it and win in the semis. Your thoughts?
The fact that it's a relatively close vote is not really surprising to me, because it feels like that's going to be one where people are kind of going, I don't really like either of these choices.
That was a lot of the feedback that I received, Tom.
Yes, I bet it was. I think that probably, I guess that probably makes sense. You add a number to the Big Ten champion banner and the facility and all that kind of stuff. Do they care that they don't win the Cotton Bowl or the Orange Bowl? If you're going to lose the next one, does playing for the national championship matter that much? I think, boy, it's really difficult, because I think there are going to be the people who are going to view one of these as not a success are going to view the other one as not a success. I don't think that anyone is going to be happy with either of these necessarily.
They're not.
Boy, I'm just trying to think, like 2020, they went and they played for a national championship, but which was a better season for Ohio State? 2019, where they won the Big Ten but lost in the semifinals, or 2020, where they won the Big Ten but lost in the national championship game? The answer to that, I feel like, probably is, that's not exactly, because they won the Big Ten championship that year, but either way.
But I would say 2019 is viewed as the better season.
It is, and it was a better team, and it was,
over Michigan.
Weird season that it's hard to.
Yeah.
But the way 2020 ended, the answer to this honestly might depend on what's the score of the national championship game. If they lose by 3, that's one thing. If they lose, what was the score of that game? 50-something to 20-something? That Alabama game. And that was such a cathartic semifinal win over Clemson that I think that helped probably make that maybe helps that season a little bit in the minds of Ohio State fans. It's just, this is the time of year when I fully expect every Ohio State fan to go, nope, I do not accept. I reject the premise of this question and I refuse to answer it.
Well, and I'm not going to put that one out on Twitter, because right now I got enough angry people at me. But I did say, no, it's definitely 2019. But no, I don't. You don't get the Michigan win in 2020, but that Clemson win was as good as that was the Michigan win that year, and it was very cathartic. So I'm not going to ask. If you want to throw it in the YouTube comments, go ahead. Let us know which of those is better and which of those is not. I'm not going to get involved in any of this anymore. So that will do it. I had one other thing that I was going to add, Tom, but I've forgotten it, so we can go. I want to thank you all for tuning in. As Tom said, go ahead and hit that thumbs up. We would appreciate it. And leave a 5-star rating and review if you have not yet done so. It's your podcast platform of choice. And subscribe to the YouTube channel if you have not. And also find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Sign up, become a member, say hello to us there on the message board. We would appreciate that. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.